Hey y'all, here at OS Reviews. We're taking a quick look at the Skyloong GK61 Pro in this video, which is a wireless mechanical keyboard, so you can connect it by Bluetooth to your smartphone, tablet, or computer. Now, I'm aware that we also checked out another wireless mechanical keyboard very recently, the Salt and Light. But that's the thing about competition. When one brand releases a product, other brands in the same space want to one-up them and also make something competitive. So as a result, as consumers, we're hit with kind of a wave of options, usually at a similar point in time. So the GK61 Pro is another kind of strange keyboard, to be completely honest, because it has a rather unconventional split spacebar design with a knob in the middle. So if we actually flip it open immediately, you can see that here. So you can press on the spacebar either on the left or the right side, and they both will trigger that function. Aside from just looking different, one benefit here is it's a little bit more stable as you're pressing on it compared to an ultra-long spacebar, especially on budget mechanical keyboards in the past, tended to feel a little bit more wobbly because of the width of the entire keycap compared to a smaller conventional key. So in terms of color configurations, by default there is this blue and pink version, but we have the gray and white. It also comes in kind of a yellowish variant, also gray, but has a aluminum casing, which is a little bit more costly, but this one here is made of an ABS polycarbonate plastic frame. Otherwise, functionality though is quite similar, again having wireless Bluetooth, but you can still use it as a wired mechanical keyboard, of course, by plugging it into a USB Type-A port. There's even a 2.4G wireless connectivity option as well, or a transmitter that can be used if your computer doesn't have Bluetooth built on in. It comes in 3 switch options gated on yellow, brown, or red. We have the yellow switch edition. The spring though is going to be a little heavier than the red switch and yet a little bit more of a tactile bump, on average requiring around 45 grams of weight to activate. Still feels like a pretty satisfying typing experience, but shouldn't really bother people around you, even if it's not necessarily a silent switch like we saw in our other video. Otherwise, it is an RGB keyboard like most of these days, so you can customize the color, transition effects, also using a companion app, basically a driver on Windows or PC. You can also tweak what all the colors and macros can correspond to. Even the switches are hot swappable on this model, so you can pull it out and change it for something like brown switches or blue switches in the future if desired. Switches also claim to be pre-lubricated and stabilized, so should have a little bit more of a nice typing experience even out of the box compared to other budget mechanical keyboards we've seen in the past. And that adjustable knob there can also be used for different shortcuts with the companion app. For example, you can use it to change volume, go up and down different pages. You can set it relatively flexibly using the software. And last but not least, here's just a profile view of the gasket there that dampens some of the sound and makes the entire thing a little bit more stabilized. What I also really like is that they have a section down below that has a sound test of what the red as well as the yellow and brown switches that they're using sound like. So if you are unsure, you can compare them directly using those clips that they provided. So it's a pretty good kind of main page, I would say, that houses that information. Now we have just the keyboard itself inside, and then extra accessories mostly include just a USB Type-C cable for both charging as well as if you want to use in the wired mode. There's also going to be a keycap remover as well as a switch remover. Other accessories include a USB nano receiver. If your computer doesn't have Bluetooth, you can use it still in the wireless mode by plugging in this receiver. If you really don't like the way that the split spacebar looks like, you can actually revert to a more normal configuration, and also an extra enter as well as escape key, which are in gray color as opposed to the accented red that we have on this model. And you also get 2 additional yellow switches, so in case it breaks, you can also swap it out, which is a pretty nice extra. And you can kind of see this is what those yellow switches look like. Also, what's really cute is they give you this additional, almost magnetic piece that can store this nano receiver when it's not being used. So if you wanted to, you could do something like remove the escape key and then replace it with this switch that will house the nano receiver on the very top. So the button can still be pressed down, but now you always have the receiver with you if you're on the go, and you won't lose this extra dongle since there is no additional slot to tuck it into. So plenty of goodies in the box to get you up and going, which is fairly impressive considering the budget price point. And it's called the GK61 because it's a 61% layout. It gets rid of a conventional, say, numpad on the side by minimizing the frame, although the regular keys are still quite large and easy to press on. But notably, you'll be missing out on a conventional arrow up, down, and left and right key on the side of the keyboard, as you can see there. So if you're looking for that, this might not be the best choice, at least by default. But for things like typing and just accessing the normal functions, function keys, that should be just fine. Otherwise, the frame on this variant, again, is constructed out of polycarbonate plastic with a slight raised ledge to it. And then on the back here, we have that Type-C port for either power or charging. What you won't find on the back here, though, would be additional prongs that can further elevate the position higher. So this is the default angle that it kind of sits at. You also won't find, interestingly enough, any kind of obvious switches for turning it on. So all of the function keys are just built into the normal keyboard part. You kind of have to master these commands. So for example, you turn the keyboard on by tapping on the function plus tab button, and it will basically enter the Bluetooth mode. And it's going to be more obvious once we're in a slightly darker environment. Otherwise, in terms of the knob there, by default, you can use it for volume controls by sliding it higher or lower, clockwise, counterclockwise. You can press to mute the audio altogether, as well as you can use it for zooming in and out of different photos. Dimming the lights here, you can see that the RGB colors are quite vibrant and they're easy to see as long as it's not in bright daylight, and they do shine through all the keycaps, so they are fully legible and easy to type in the dark. The keyboard will also time out and go to sleep to conserve on battery after a couple of seconds of inactivity. Here's also a quick typing test of what it sounds like. So overall, I would say it's a pretty satisfying sound, and indeed all the letters do feel quite solid and reassuring, again with the built-in rubber gasket, dampening, and the pre-lubed keys. So it does feel like a pretty solid build, I have to say, just right out of the box. Pretty satisfying to type on. The keys do feel fairly consistent in feel from one to the other. Again, benefits of a mechanical keyboard include not only that tactility, so you get more of that confirmation, but technically you're able to achieve slightly faster typing speeds compared to a membrane style or island keyboard, just because of the springs. You don't have to exert as much force and press down all the way, but just a little bit of a press and it kind of does the action for you. Plus, mechanical keyboards and their switches should last longer than membrane keyboards, so you should get a little bit more life out of these, which makes them, again, quite popular not only for gaming, but also for things like programming, essays, and just writers in general. We can tap on function plus bracket key to cycle through 9 different transition effects that it has on board. So if we tap on that here, we'll just go through this. This is kind of the first effect, which is kind of a memory mode that will slowly fade after a couple of seconds. Tap on it again, we'll go into a ripple mode, as you can tell there. And once more again, we'll go into another one that kind of ripples outwards from the middle. Also looks quite cool. Once more here, that will go into kind of more of a random ripple across the entire keyboard, slightly faster. Once more here, which is more of a kind of reactive mode in a way, where it cycles through the top whenever it hears a little bit more sound, as you can tell, using a built-in microphone. Next one here is also going to react when you're typing on it. Normally it's just going to stripe towards the middle there using the reaction, and it's going to then loop back between 1 and 5 using that first bracket key. If for the next transitions between 6 and 9, you can tap on function and the second bracket here to go into the other modes, which includes a continuously lit mode here that will be green by default. One more here that changes it into individual colors like blue, orange, that will slowly now transition into colors of the rainbow before then looping back again. So those are different transitions that you have, which are actually quite effective, I have to say, pretty fun to customize and use. It's just you have to remember some of those shortcuts, including function bracket, as well as, again, function tab for acting as power. Now, as far as connecting to Bluetooth devices, you can hold on the function plus Z button or the function plus X key to connect to 2 devices at once. Although I'm not the biggest fan of the brightness and the speed adjustments. So in all the animations that we saw there, you can make it brighter or dimmer, as well as go faster in its movement. But you have to remember even more slightly strange combinations, including using comma, period, as well as colon, parentheses for you to master those controls. I almost wish that the keycaps here might have printed something on the bottom there to serve as a hint or indication in case you accidentally lose this manual, for example, although that would obviously maybe make the aesthetics not quite as clean from a design perspective, but it is what it is. So anyways, again, in terms of the way it looks, as well as the typing experience, I have to say it is a pretty satisfying, and it's a good overall tactility, at least for a budget keyboard. Even the knob there in the middle doesn't really get in the way of your typing. As you can tell, there still feels comfortable enough, and it has a pretty satisfying rotating mechanism there in terms of that switch, as well as pressing down. It all feels quite tight and precise. Now, what I really do like, though, is the transparency that this company is advertising. They have all of their kind of designs as well as drivers placed on GitHub, so it can be very easily downloaded and shared by the community, really trying to be more open source about the parts that they're using And again, using the companion software, you're able to adjust what the knob can correspond to, including acting as a cursor for more precise movements between different letters, which can be very handy if you're using some of these professional tools, having this kind of overall scroll wheel jog dial design, which we don't usually see on compact 60% mechanical keyboards. Otherwise, your companion software will look something like this, in which you're able to change, again, all the colors individually, set additional macros that you prefer using a standard computer, Windows, or Mac, although the software isn't available on, say, Android or iOS. So that is more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the Skyloong GK61 Pro, and I have to say that it is a, again, pretty nice compact mini mechanical keyboard, especially in terms of having the adjustable knob, which surprisingly doesn't get in the way of the regular typing experience, which by default using the Gatoron yellow switches do feel very well balanced already, plus some of the extra accessories that you get in the box are quite thoughtful. As for potential downsides, like any other compact keyboard, you are missing some of the additional things like arrow keys for many functions, and instead relies on combinations to trigger, which may require a little bit of additional memory for you to remember. However, as far as the hardware is concerned, I have to say it does a pretty good job for a value-oriented mechanical keyboard.